My name is David. I was born in Boston and grew up in a normal family as a regular high school student. That said, my appearance might not be considered normal. I was already 5 feet 7 inches when I was in elementary school and over 6 feet 3 inches in high school. However, I didn't have a slim model-like physique. I had a heavy, muscular build, weighing almost 220 pounds, with a beard so tough it could beat a razor. So, I've never been seen as my age, and I've been recruited for martial arts clubs and rugby teams many times. But despite my appearance, I'm more of an indoor and introverted person. I liked playing around with computers and even did some programming. So in high school, I joined the computer club, not a sports team, spending my days typing on the keyboard with my bear-like hairy fingers. While it was rare to have a bear in the computer club, there was another unusual member. It was my classmate Rachel, who, to put it mildly, was stunningly beautiful. Walking through town, she would make all the men turn on her, and in the city, she'd get business cards from a number of scouts. And strangely enough, Rachel was my girlfriend. Now, I don't even remember how we met. We just liked each other, that was the start. You might wonder why a beauty like her would date a bear-like guy like me. Honestly, I wonder too. People called us Beauty and the Beast, but our love grew steadily. However, after more than 2 years of dating, our relationship changed significantly. Hey, we'll have to decide which college to go soon. What are you planning, David? Well, I want to be an engineer, so I'll probably go to a college where I can work more with computers. What about you, Rachel? Actually, I'm going to a college in a foreign country. My dad thinks it's best for my future. I was shocked. I couldn't process it all at once. Abroad. Why? Well, I haven't told you this yet, but my dad is the CEO of a company. The company she mentioned was one I'd seen on TV commercials. In short, I'm the company's CEO's daughter. He thinks studying abroad will broaden my perspective for when I eventually get involved in the business. But I want to stay with you, David. I see. But, well, yeah, that's something. What do you want me to do, David? Of course, I want us to stay together. Really? Then help me convince my dad. I want to be with you too. Well, that's a bit. Why not? Because, well, he's a famous CEO, right? I'm not sure my words would be convincing enough. But you just said you wanted to be together. I do want to be together. But, you know, your dad has his own thoughts too. When I looked at Rachel, she had tears welling up in her big eyes. They looked like they would fall any moment. After a moment of silence, Rachel spoke. I hate you, David. I hate you so much. She ran off. I wanted to chase after her, but I couldn't take that step. As a high school student, I didn't feel capable of changing an adult's mind. No, that's not right. I gave up before even trying. I lacked the courage. From that day, a distance grew between us. We stopped seeing each other and lost contact. Before I knew it, we graduated, and Rachel went abroad. There were plenty of opportunities. Rachel is the most precious one to me. Yes, all I had to do was to say that to her. But I couldn't do it. Since then, there's been a huge hole in my heart, and nothing I did could fill that void. I spent my days filled with regret. I graduated from college without much direction, started working at a company without much purpose, and kept working aimlessly. Before I knew it, nearly 10 years had passed since I joined the company. Despite my thick fingers, I managed my work competently and even took on mentoring younger colleagues. However, the more I worked, the more uncomfortable I felt at the company. It was all because of my boss, Steve, who became my direct supervisor along the way. Steve was not particularly capable but seemed to have a cozy relationship with HR, allowing him to hold a position beyond his abilities. Unable to see himself objectively, he treated his subordinates terribly. Among them, I often became the target, perhaps because of my noticeable appearance. I was constantly berated for unreasonable things, blamed for the mistakes of juniors and superiors alike, and criticized at every turn. I often thought about quitting a job with such a boss. How many times had I considered it? But I never had the courage to take that step. I lacked the resolve to change my situation. So, I continued to work, feeling drained and unmotivated. However, one day, something happened that was simply unacceptable. During a business negotiation with a client in Boston, Steve made a crucial mistake. And then, he blamed everything on me. The mistake was simple: he sent the wrong data to the client, causing significant errors in their system. I had definitely debugged the data and handed it to Steve. Yet, during the multiple exchanges, he must have lost track. Steve ended up sending the old data. It was clear from the properties and update timestamps of the sent data. Yet, when I pointed this out to Steve, he wouldn't listen to me at all. Instead, he blamed me for not managing the data properly. At this point, nothing I said would be heard. My colleagues sympathized but kept silent, fearing the fallout would reach them. Anyway, this is your mistake. What are you going to do about it? Our relationship with this client could be ruined. Go apologize to them right now. Right now? To Boston? What, do you have a problem with that? You're always like this, always dissatisfied. I understand, I'm sorry. I'll head there immediately. So, I packed my things and boarded a train to Boston. I never thought I'd return home in such a way. I hadn't visited my family in a long time. Feeling despondent, I honestly doubted my ability to continue at this company. I was sure I had acquired enough skills as an engineer. I would seriously need to consider finding a new job. As I gazed out the window, lost in thought, the sky was overcast, hinting at snow. I arrived at the station, took a taxi, and headed to the client's office. After explaining the situation at the reception, I waited nervously for the client. At first, the two representatives approached me with extreme anger. But after I apologized profusely and handed over the correct data, they finally calmed down. When they learned I was from Boston, we chatted about our hometowns, and by evening, we had bonded, with them even saying, "Please come again." I felt a sense of accomplishment, but it was quickly shattered when I called Steve from the taxi on my way back. "What were you doing until this time?" "Well, I was talking with the client, and time just flew by." "It took you too long. You're really bad at negotiations, aren't you? You weren't just out drinking somewhere, were you?" I didn't even feel like explaining anymore, so I was just listening without saying anything back. Steve then told me to return to the office. He wanted me to summarize the details of the negotiation and apology on the train ride back. Filled with an indescribable sense of emptiness, I closed my eyes until I arrived at the station. But unfortunately, I arrived at the station quickly. Though it was my hometown, I didn't have time to visit my family or enjoy the local food and drink. I had to return to New York to report today's events and outcomes. All because of that detestable Steve. I felt a mix of exhaustion, hunger, and frustration, and tears welled up in my eyes. This was unacceptable. I was back in my hometown after a long time. I thought I should do something, so I headed into the station. It was past 6 p.m., and the train would arrive in about 30 minutes. I decided to quickly grab some sushi, but it didn't go so well. The sushi and izakaya places in the station were all crowded with people lining up outside. I didn't have enough time to wait in line. So, I tried to pick out a good bento box to satisfy myself even a little. Considering I had to return to work, drinking on the train was out of the question. Feeling a bit down, I ended up buying crab sushi and a bottle of green tea, as I did every time I came back home. With a heavy heart, I paid for my meal and checked my watch, seeing that there was still time before the train arrived. That said, I didn't have anything else I wanted to do. Actually, staying in the station with all its temptations was uncomfortable, so I decided to head to the platform early. When I got to the platform, it was still early, and there were hardly any people. I trudged to a bench to rest my tired body, and at the far end of the platform, a couple was making a lot of noise. I figured they were probably drunk and having fun, and I opened my laptop to start writing the report. Just then, I heard a woman's high-pitched voice. "Stop. Don't touch me. Let me go." Curious about the commotion, I turned to look and saw that it was a woman who had shouted. On closer inspection, it was clear they weren't a couple. The woman was dressed in an elegant, high-end coat, while the man was an older guy with thinning hair. Even from a distance, it was obvious the man was drunk, and the woman was clearly uncomfortable. I quickly put my laptop back in my bag and headed towards them. "Stay away. I'll call the police." "Hey, what's going on here?" Ha? Who are you? The man turned around, visibly startled. It made sense. A 6 feet 3 inches tall and weighing 220 pounds man standing there would be intimidating. But the man, drunk as he was, didn't back down. Who are you? Are you her friend? Well, not exactly. Wait, Rachel? I was more surprised than the old man. The woman being harassed was Rachel. I hadn't seen her since high school, over 10 years ago. But I recognized her immediately. Sure, she wore makeup and had changed a lot since then. But her distinctive nose, soft lips, and determined eyes were unmistakable. Is that you, David? Rachel recognized me too. Given my unique appearance, it was hard not to. Why are you here? As we were struck speechless by this unexpected reunion, the older man interrupted with a rough voice. So, you two know each other? Well, tell her this for me. She was sitting next to me on the train and kept giving me looks. When we got off at the same station, I tried to talk to her, but she suddenly started acting like she didn't want to. So, tell her to listen to the elders. What are you talking about? I never gave you any looks. Liar. Every time you went to the bathroom, you lifted your skirt right in front of me, showing off those nice legs. You were clearly inviting me. Just admit it. Excuse me? I was just going to the bathroom, and you were sitting on the aisle seat. What else was I supposed to do? From their conversation, it seemed they had sat next to each other on the train. Every time Rachel, sitting by the window, got up, she had to pass by the man sitting on the aisle. Usually, the man might not have behaved this way, but he seemed quite drunk. The fact that they got off at the same station might have given him a sense of entitlement, leading to his behavior. However, knowing Rachel, she wouldn't give a man like this any attention, especially not a disheveled, overweight older man. As I thought about this, the man turned back towards me. So, what are you gonna do? If you're her friend, tell her. If not, then get lost. In the past, I might have been intimidated by such an aggressive tone. But not this time. Excuse me, sir. I am actually quite close to this woman. I apologize for the misunderstanding, but we were supposed to meet here. I don't know what happened on the train, but Rachel is not the type to flirt with men. I'm sure it's a misunderstanding. Huh? What are you talking about? Look at her, wearing that mini skirt, clearly inviting me. No, she isn't that kind of person. I'm sure she wore that skirt because she was meeting me. So, please leave. If you continue to insult her, I won't stand by. Let's settle this peacefully. The stairs are that way. I pointed my thick, bony finger toward the stairs. The man was more intimidated by my appearance than my words. He clicked his tongue and walked away towards the stairs. As he left, the announcement for the next train to New York was made. Thank you for backing me up. But why are you here, David? I was here for a business meeting. Oh, not visiting your family? No, I was too busy. I didn't have time to visit home. But why are you here, Rachel? My parents insisted I visit them. Work had slowed down, so I finally came back. The train pulled into the station, and passengers began to disembark. So, you're heading back to New York now? Yeah, I need to report on today's meeting. I see. It's been so long since we last met. Do you really have to go back today? You helped me out, and there's so much to catch up. If you can, I'd love to grab dinner together. Rachel looked up at me with her eyebrows knit and a pleading gaze. That look had always made my heart race when we were dating, and seeing it again after so long was incredibly powerful. Well, I suppose. Come on. Your company is in the city, right? It'll be late by the time you get back anyway. Why not stay a bit and catch the last train? My resolve crumbled easily. There were many reasons. I was dissatisfied with my current job. Why should I go the extra mile for Steve, the source of my frustration? And the invitation for food was tempting, given how hungry I was. Also, as she asked, there was no urgent need to report back tonight. I had already informed Steve by phone, and he wouldn't see my written report until the next day. so there was no reason to rush back. But most importantly, Rachel was here. That was everything. Back then, I didn't have the courage to move forward. I have regretted that decision ever since. I had decided that if I ever saw Rachel again, I would act with all my courage. So, I watched the train doors close, turned off my phone, and got into a taxi with Rachel. We headed to a local restaurant she recommended that served delicious fish and sake. Drinking with Rachel was a truly delightful, dreamlike experience. Rachel now worked at the New York branch of her father's company, holding a somewhat high position, and her daily life was quite demanding. I shared my frustrations about work, and Rachel laughed, saying, "You really have terrible bosses." Her slightly flushed cheeks, glistening eyes, and glossy lips were all so beautiful. I had thought she was beautiful in high school, but her radiance had rather even increased. "So, David, are you married?" "I don't see a ring." "Married? No way. I don't even have a girlfriend. I'm too busy with work, and I look like a bear." "Oh, don't say that. You have an ex-girlfriend who was right here." "Yeah, but that was a mistake of your life, wasn't it? Thanks for giving a bear like me a dream back then." "Stop it, really. Back then, I truly loved you, and I don't think of it as a mistake. If anything, I've always." "What? Do you still like me or something?" Grinning to hide my embarrassment and self-doubt, I joked with Rachel. Of course, there's no way a beautiful CEO's daughter like her would still have feelings for me. I was sure she must have moved on with some handsome, wealthy guy by now, or so I thought. "Yes. I've always liked you, ever since then." Rachel's face and even her ears turned bright red, but she still looked straight at me as she said it. "Wait, seriously? You're joking, right?" "I'm not. I've always thought about you since we broke up. I've tried dating other people, but every time, I realized I still liked you." "But, you said you hated me." "No, I said I hated the cowardly David who wouldn't stand up for himself. I wanted you to laugh and say, 'I'll convince your father no matter what.' I wanted you to confidently say, 'I'm the only one who can make Rachel happy.' But you didn't." Rachel was right. Since that day, I had often fallen into self-loathing. Why couldn't I muster the courage? Why couldn't I take that step? Every night, I pondered these questions, but I never acted. "I see. I didn't notice it. I'm sorry. No, I couldn't be honest either. We were probably both just too young." Rachel smiled as she said that. "That's right. Back then, I was immature. I was a foolish kid who didn't understand what truly mattered. But now, things are different." "You're right. But now, I think I've grown up a bit. I know what's truly important." "Rachel, I love you. I know I'm just a bear. And you're like a princess, but I don't want to lie to my heart anymore." "Rachel, I love you. If it's for you, I can face your father and do anything to make you happy. So, will you spend your life with me?" Rachel froze when she heard my words. Then, with tears streaming from her big eyes, she simply said, "Yes." After more than 10 years, we were reunited. I don't remember much of what happened after that. We spent a wonderful time together, and I ended up staying at a hotel in my hometown. I told Rachel I would formally meet her father later, and we both left. Feeling like I was in a dream, I crawled into bed at the hotel and realized my phone had been off. When I turned it on, there were dozens of missed calls from my company. I messed up. That's what I thought for a moment. But if I had prioritized work and taken that train, I would have regretted it for the rest of my life. Honestly, if this incident led to more unreasonable treatment at work, I wouldn't miss that company. I'd quit without hesitation. I showered and fell asleep, thinking of Rachel's face. The next morning, I woke up to a message from an unknown number. It was from Rachel. "You were amazing yesterday, David. Not just for saving me from that drunk, but for making the right decisions for my sake. You were really cool. Today might be tough at work, but I'll always support you. Take care." I grinned to myself and reread the message again and again. However, I had a challenge ahead of me. Steeling myself, I put on my suit, got into a taxi, and headed for the train to New York. During the ride, I felt an indescribable energy welling up inside me. By the time I summarized the previous day's meeting on the train, I had already arrived in Brooklyn. I transferred trains, passed through the company's entrance, and returned to my office. As I had informed them of my arrival time, Steve and my HR manager, John, were waiting for me. Before I could even put down my bag, they led me to a small conference room. "Why didn't you answer the calls yesterday? What's the status of the meeting?" As I mentioned on the call yesterday, the meeting went well, so there's no need to worry. I didn't return the calls because I was feeling unwell and ended up staying overnight. I had already informed you that the meeting was successful, so I didn't think it was critical. It's not your place to decide that. Do you even understand your situation? My situation? Yes, Steve mentioned that you messed up an important meeting. No, I didn't. If anything, it was rather Steve's mistake. I don't want to hear excuses. According to Steve, your usual work performance has been subpar, defying your superiors and creating a negative atmosphere. What? Who said that? Behind John, I saw Steve smirking. I realized that John had already been influenced by Steve, making it pointless to argue further. Seeing this, I decided that I no longer cared about this company. Therefore, we are considering transferring you to our branch in Kentucky. Are you saying I'm being demoted? Come on, don't put it that way. Kentucky has a lot of nice things. It might be a long stay, but you don't have a family, so enjoy it. Steve said this sarcastically, putting a hand on my shoulder. At this point, I knew I didn't need to stay with this company any longer. Fine. Instead of a demotion, I'd rather quit. Consider this my resignation effective this month. Hearing this, Steve and John exchanged pleased looks. If that's your decision, we can't stop you. Losing someone of your talent is unfortunate for us, but if that's what you want, you need to find a new job, so you don't need to come in tomorrow. Pack your things today and prepare for your future. Strangely, I felt no anger or regret. Instead, I was filled with a sense of liberation and excitement for new opportunities. I quickly said my goodbyes to my colleagues, packed my belongings, and left the company. I had no regrets. The only thing I pondered was what to do next. The first thing I did was call Rachel. She said she was still at her parents' house, so I figured it wouldn't be a bother. "Hey, David. Why are you calling in the middle of the day?" "Well, I just got back from the office." Long story short, they tried to demote me, so I decided to quit. No way. That's actually great news. Hey, I'm feeling a bit down here. Isn't that a bit harsh? Oh, sorry. That came out wrong. I actually told my dad about you. Wait, already? There's no problem though. But what did he say? I've been telling my dad about my past relationships, and he's actually been worried about me. Worried? About what? I'm not exactly young anymore, you know? My dad wants to see his grandchildren, but I was still hung up on my past relationships. So, when he heard that we started dating again, he was surprisingly happy. That's a relief. But how does my quitting make things better? Well, I mentioned that you're an engineer. It turns out my dad's company is expanding and needs experienced people. I think you're perfect for the job. Don't you agree? Yeah, I've been focused on my work all these years. I think I can handle it, but are you sure? Come on, the David I know wouldn't doubt himself like that. I could sense Rachel's smile through the phone. You're right. I can do this. As your boyfriend and an engineer, I'll meet your dad's expectations. I'm so happy to hear that. Can you come back to Boston soon? My dad wants to meet you. And so, I found myself boarding the train back to Boston the next day. Though the scenery outside the train window was the same as yesterday, it looked completely different to me. When I arrived at the designated station, Rachel and her father were waiting for me. I felt a bit intimidated by her father's stern look, but I began to walk towards them. It was a strong yet careful step, leading to a brighter future.